You're listening to Stimulus Tech Talk, a conversation-based podcast created by Stimulus Technologies that covers a range of topics related to business and technology.
Welcome to Stimulus Tech Talk. I am Sherry Lip, the marketing manager here at Stimulus Technologies, and I am here with Nathan Whittacre, the CEO of Stimulus Technologies. And today we're going to be talking about patch management and why it's important, because that might not sound like the most exciting topic in the world, but it is actually very important. Hello, Nathan.
Hey, Sherry. So I brought a couple of pairs of pants to patch up. Out patching our jeans.
I should have said it's not about clothes. It's about computers. Now I'm reminded of those old patches that were on my jeans. But what are we talking about when we're talking about patch management in the IT world?
So patch management is making sure that the software you're running, everything from your operating system down to the applications that run on the computers, uh, even to your hardware devices, which are often forgotten about, are running the most current software or firmware. And it's an essential part of IT management to ensure that the computers are running the up-to-date versions of operating systems, software, firmware, and everything in between.
So, why is this so critical? Is this something we include as part of our management for our clients?
It is something that we include, especially the operating system patching, but line of business applications is also part of it. And then, keeping your firewalls, network switches, and all the hardware devices of the network up to date with the latest software and firmware is essential because there are all kinds of vulnerabilities that are discovered in that software that hackers can exploit. So as a programmer, you're writing software and you don't realize that you may include code that allows a hacker to take over the system, or there's like a vulnerability, a hole that they can get through as part of the software. And hackers are, constantly looking for these vulnerabilities. There's lists and lists that are published that are on the CVE list that show, different things that are discovered. Some of them are pretty innocuous that, that don't do much. That there may be a potential vulnerability, but it's so minor it won't really do anything. But there's some that are so huge that an unpatched system, a hacker can, access your entire computer or your entire network, and get through all the security that you put in place. So it's really just the vulnerabilities that are built into the systems that are unaware, that the programmers are unaware of when they publish the software.
How do we what is the patch? Is it more than updating?
It's updating for the
Is
most
it
part.
okay.
Yeah, it's
So
keeping the system up to date
um,
with the latest version of the software. Um, some, some patches and some updates to software are for features and not security. So we do classify patches in varying different degrees. So there's critical patches, which are often the highest level of patching that has to happen, that include, those vulnerabilities that would allow a hacker to enter into the system or take over your systems. And then there's just feature updates, nice to have patches that really um, aren't essential to be installed, but we can if clients want us to. So there's a range in between that, right? So
mhm.
it's not just all critical and nice to have. There are ranges of things of patching, and so critical patches we often deploy almost immediately, but feature patches we may delay weeks or months, because sometimes feature patches can cause other issues too. So, we don't just roll out, the lower level patches just because we want to make sure that they're not going to cause issues with other systems. And so that's one of the issues that comes up with patching, is often these patches have to be tested and you don't want to just roll them out. There was a tech joke that I did, I don't know, it was a couple of weeks ago or months ago, about Tech Tuesday is kind of like a roller coaster or a Patch Tuesday is a roller coaster for IT guys. So Microsoft generally releases their patches. I think it's on the second Tuesday of the month, and that Tuesday is one of the most difficult days for IT guys, because sometimes those patches can conflict with software or cause issues with other systems. And, if you just roll it out to your entire organization, you could take the entire organization down with a patch. So we often limit how much patching happens. We wait a little bit, especially on the non-critical ones, to roll them out, because we don't want the actual fix to cause more pain.
And so a lot of times we have automatic updates. Do we, as a company, do we suggest not having automatic updates, or is it okay for some things and not for others?
Yeah, so what our IT management software does is it actually turns off the operating system's automatic update, and we control when those patches occur. So we usually, like I said, critical patches we roll out immediately, especially ones that have what are called patches for 0-day vulnerabilities, or ones that were unknown about until that moment, and then the manufacturer or the software maker releases a patch to try to correct that quickly. So we will roll those out quickly, but other ones will stagger and roll out over time. So if we get questions from clients all the time that says, my operating system used to pop up and say, "Oh, would you like to update now?" And now I don't see those pop-ups anymore. And that's because our software is controlling when those patches happen rather than the users, so that we have a little bit more ability to control a bad patch effect occurring on the network.
Yeah, I imagine there could be some training. Just one little story I had is a coworker hit update because she just thought it was updating something on her own laptop, but it actually updated the system for the whole company, and the IT department went a little crazy. So how do we know what we're supposed to do? We probably should train employees to never do updates on their own.
For the most part, and one of the ways that we prevent that is we limit users' ability to have administrative rights on their computers, because a lot of patches require the user to have administrative rights on the system or on the server. And so, that's one of the reasons why we recommend that users don't have administrative rights, is because we don't want them doing things like that, your story. So, now to get around that, because the patches do need administrative rights, our tools have an elevation feature that allows, for patches that we allow into the system to elevate to the correct amount of rights to be able to install the patch, and then for that instance, um, and then they demote back to regular user for everything else they're doing. So it's difficult for the users, because they feel a little frustrated that I want to just update QuickBooks, or I want to just update XYZ software on my own. Why can't I do it? That's a question that we get often. And the reason why we want to be involved is because there may be system requirements that are required for that update. Maybe you need more memory, or maybe you need more disk space, or maybe the operating system version you're running on won't support that new software, or maybe there's integration with another piece of software that needs to be checked. And so having IT as part of any type of update is really important, because we can make sure that from a complete global perspective, that patch is okay. So there's a lot more that goes into this than just clicking that update button.
Yeah, and that might be something people aren't aware of. It seems like we a lot of sometimes see patches come through after we do an update, and there's some glitch, or it's buggy, or there's a vulnerability. So is that something we also help manage?
We do, and the other thing we want to make sure is like backups are good so that we can roll back patches. So that's one of the reasons why we want to have a little bit of control over it too, is so that we ensure that there's no issues going forward, and we can roll back if there are issues. So there's definitely, I mean, some patches are easy to occur, like if you're patching Adobe Reader or something like that, that's pretty straightforward. But when you're dealing with your line of business application, that could affect a lot of different users, you certainly want to have control over those patches, um, rather than just doing it. Like for example, I mean, this is pretty straightforward, but a lot of companies used to use QuickBooks Desktop. Now a lot of companies have moved to QuickBooks Online, but when when QuickBooks Desktop has a patch, it will often update the company file of the accounting company information. And so if one user updates their system, it updates the database, and now another user tries to log in that hasn't done the update and can't access the data, and it causes a conflict. So that again, we have to schedule it to make sure that all the users that need access are on the same version, so that and maybe the server needs to be updated too, because especially if it's a major version change, we have to go in and update the server. So there's multiple steps that need to happen. And so a lot of times, one user updating their software can cause an emergency ticket to fix, like your story, updating the software for everybody. And so it turns a routine issue into an emergency.
Yeah, so a lot more into it than people probably imagine. So companies have a lot of different software. Does stimulus manage for our clients? Do we manage all of it? Could they have something that we're not managing and there be a conflict?
Yeah, so one of the things we work on doing is vendor management, and especially with all their line of business applications. So we take control to ensure that all their applications are, and we have relationships with those vendors, especially the critical line of business applications. We are rolling out patch management for the minor applications I mentioned, like Adobe Reader, or those small applications that we also assist and control that patch management. So that's a little bit more difficult, from a patch management standpoint, to ensure that all those are getting updated. But we are rolling that out with some new features and tools that we have to assist our clients with it.
And going back to what you said, like a critical patch, and trying to coordinate that everybody has the update. How do we handle it when there is a critical update? Like there's something that's vulnerable, we have to get fixed right away.
Yeah, so operating systems for sure is where the critical patches occur, um, more often than not. And so we'll roll that out automatically. But if there is a critical patch with one of the pieces of software, a line of business application, let's say your accounting software or your dental software or your practice management software, whatever it may be, you will just have to coordinate with all the users, and that goes in as a high priority or even a critical ticket for us to work on right away, especially if you get notifications. So if you get an email from your software vendor that says, there's a patch that needs to be rolled out, do it quickly. Please forward that to us so we can, coordinate and work with it. If you're not one of our clients, email it to your IT service provider and say this is something that we need to do right away, and they make sure that they work on it immediately. The other one that we monitor a lot and often have to work on quickly is firewall patching. So we've had over the years, and especially recently, a lot of office firewalls that have had 0-day vulnerabilities, in things even like VPNs. And we've had to roll out patches immediately because there's a vulnerability that's discovered that could allow an attacker access into any one of these devices. So we've had to jump on, you know, updating hundreds of firewalls in a couple of days because of these patches. And so our team is monitoring constantly these CVEs that are identified, and um, get these patches out quickly to our clients.
And managing patch management, does that help businesses with their compliance requirements?
It is part of compliance requirement to be on the latest updates of software. So yes, it is. Most compliance frameworks require patching to be part of any IT system.
And last question, if somebody isn't working with us and maybe they're not having anybody doing this for them, what can they look for to see if anything is falling through the cracks? And they should probably call somebody, but what should they be looking for?
I think, just if you see those pop-ups, users don't really like rebooting their computers that often. So, you can go around to the computers, go into Windows updates, if you're running a Windows environment, see if there's a lot of missing patches. That's one way to do it. If you haven't had anybody log into your firewall recently or your network switches, those patches usually come out every few months on those devices, and if it's been years, you're most likely behind on those also. And a firewall patch will take down your network for a period of time, so it's those have to be coordinated and communicated when those patches occur. So that's one of the big things, on the operating system. Look to see if you have the latest and greatest version of it. And I feel like a broken record, but Microsoft is stopping support for Windows 10 next month. So if you're after October, I think it's 14th. Yeah, I just double check my date as we're speaking here. So October 14th is the last day that Microsoft is going to release public patches for Windows 10. And that's really critical. Now you can pay some money per computer to continue getting patches from Microsoft, but after October 14th, it's not free anymore. And historically, almost every version of Windows, when they've done a major update, the hackers know about a vulnerability in an older operating system, and they don't release it in the wild until after Microsoft stops releasing patches. And they might wait a few months and start attacking networks. And so our concern for sure is that there's a vulnerability in Windows 10 that we're not able to stop if clients are still running Windows 10 from those being attacked. So if you are running Windows 10 in your environment, definitely want to make sure that you're getting that updated to the next. I mean, we have less than 30 days now. Probably by the time this airs, it's going to be less than a week or two. You get that done, and it's just an essential part of IT management. Is ensuring that you're running the latest version of your operating system. If you're running Macintosh, Mac environment, Mac just released their OS 26. Um, you know, Older OSs are still well supported. You may want to wait a little bit before updating your systems to OS 26. We always recommend waiting a little bit, let them work the kinks out. A lot of times when these major updates get rolled out and released, they release a little update right afterwards. So there may be a 26.1 that releases within the next couple of weeks. And 26 just is more of a big feature update than a security update. So I would recommend holding off on doing that for maybe about a month, just to let Apple get the kinks out of their operating system worked out. And that goes for your iPhones and your iPads. Also, it's just maybe waiting a little bit and ensuring that they get their kinks worked out, and then doing the update. So
I'm sure we've all had those of us with iPhones, where it updates like every day for a few days.
yeah, and doesn't that happen? I mean, there's a major new OS, and then suddenly the next day it's like, oh wait, there's another one, and oh wait, there's another one, and suddenly it feels like you're updating every other day.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's probably a lot more to patch management than people realized, and they didn't have to get out any needle or thread. But thanks, Nathan, for the info.
My pleasure. So maybe I need to go sew some patches on my jeans today, but I think we covered everything on patch management from an IT perspective.
Thank you, and thanks everybody for watching or listening.